I didn't sit down when he asked me to. The chair was right there. Dark leather, pushed back slightly, waiting like a polite suggestion. He tapped it once with his fingers and said my name, calm, almost careful. The room smelled faintly of coffee that had gone cold. The clock on the wall made a sound I'd never noticed before, each second landing too loud in the silence. Sit, he said again. Softer this time. I stayed where I was. I was standing too close. Close enough that my knees brushed the inside of his. Close enough that I could feel the heat of him even through the space we pretended was still appropriate. He looked up at me, eyebrows lifting just a fraction, like he hadn't expected defiance. Especially not from me. If I sit down it will be the end. That thought landed fully formed. Heavy in my chest. Not dramatic. Not poetic. Just true. Sitting would mean agreement. Sitting would mean I'd cross something I couldn't uncross. He leaned back instead. The chair creaked under his weight, and suddenly the balance shifted. His knees parted slightly, not on purpose. At least that's what I told myself. But it left me standing between them, my hands hanging uselessly at my sides. I became acutely aware of my breathing, how shallow it sounded, how my pulse thudded somewhere low and insistent. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said. I watched his mouth when he spoke. I hated that I did. The light from the window caught on his lower lip, the same one I'd spent months not thinking about, not remembering, not dreaming of when I shouldn't have been dreaming at all. I know, I said. My voice didn't shake. That scared me more than if it had. He exhaled slowly, eyes dropping, not to my face but lower to the space between us. His hand slid to the arm of the chair, fingers tightening then releasing. A small movement. A visible one. Neither of us moved away. Outside, a car passed, tires hissing on wet pavement. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed. Life continuing, completely unaware that I was standing on the edge of a decision I'd sworn I'd never make. Just sit, he said again. Not commanding. Almost pleading. I didn't. We weren't supposed to be alone like this. That was the first rule we'd broken, quietly, almost accidentally. The meeting had ended early. People had filtered out with their laptops and polite smiles, leaving behind half-empty cups and the low hum of the lights. I should have followed them. I even reached for my bag. But he looked at me and said, "Can you stay for a minute?" Just a minute. That's how it always starts. Now the door was closed, and the air felt different, thicker, like the room had been holding its breath along with me. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other, the floor cool through the soles of my shoes. He noticed. He always noticed things like that. This doesn't have to be a thing, he said, looking past me toward the window. We can talk like adults. That almost made me laugh. Almost. We'd been circling each other for months, pretending it was nothing. Lingering too long after conversations. Messages that didn't need to be sent anyway. The way his voice dropped when he said my name, like it meant something private. Like it belonged to him for a second longer than it should have. I crossed my arms, then uncrossed them, unsure what to do with my hands. Talking is kind of how we got here, I said. That pulled his attention back to me. His eyes lifted slowly, deliberately, and settled on my face. There it was, that look that made me feel exposed, like he could see straight through the version of myself I showed everyone else. His jaw tightened just slightly. You've been distant, he said. I swallowed. You're married. The words landed between us with a dull thud. Necessary. Ugly. True. He nodded once like he'd expected it. I know. No excuses. No denial. Somehow that made it worse. Silence stretched again. I could hear my own heartbeat now loud in my ears. I was close enough to see the faint line between his brows, the one that only appeared when he was holding something back. I wondered if he could smell my perfume, if he noticed how my breath kept catching halfway in. You should sit, he said, not looking at the chair this time. He was looking at me. I shook my head. The movement was small, instinctive. My body answering before my mind could catch up. If I sit, I choose this. If I sit, I stop pretending I don't want what's already pressing in on me from every direction. He leaned forward then, forearms resting on his thighs. The distance between us shrank to something fragile, electric. His voice dropped rougher now. Why are you standing like that? He asked. I opened my mouth to answer. and realized I didn't trust myself to tell the truth. I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I took a breath that went all the way down, the kind you take when you're bracing for impact. The kind that changes something. My hands dropped to my sides again, fingers brushing the seam of my skirt. A small, unconscious movement. He noticed. His eyes followed it. "I'm standing," I said finally, "because if I sit down I won't get back up." The words surprised me as soon as they were out. Honest in a way I hadn't planned. The room went still again, like it was listening. His throat moved as he swallowed. "That's not fair," he said quietly. "I know." He leaned closer, elbows still on his knees, his face now level with my stomach, my chest. Too close to ignore. I could feel the warmth of his breath when he exhaled, slow and controlled, like he was trying not to rush anything, like he was trying not to scare me or himself. "You're shaking," he said. I looked down at my hands then, really looked at them. He was right. A faint tremor ran through my fingers, barely visible, but there. I curled them into fists to stop it. "That's not because I'm cold," I said. Something darkened in his expression. Not hunger exactly. Recognition. As if he'd finally stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding. He straightened just a little, giving me space he didn't actually want to give. "You could leave," he said. "Right now." I laughed once, sharp and breathless. "You wouldn't be saying that if you wanted me to." His gaze snapped back to mine. Held it. Didn't look away this time. "I wouldn't be saying anything," he said, "if I didn't want you to stay." That did it. That tiny shift from caution to truth sent a wave through me, low and warm and almost unbearable. I shifted my stance again, my knees brushing his this time, not by accident. The contact was brief, but it landed like a spark. He inhaled sharply. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The clock kept ticking. Somewhere, the coffee maker clicked as it shut itself off. Ordinary sounds in a room that no longer felt ordinary at all. "If I sit," I said, my voice barely above a whisper now, "everything changes." He nodded just once. "I know." His hand lifted from the arm of the chair. Not touching me, not yet, but hovering there, suspended between intention and restraint. "And if you don't?" he asked. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt the weight of every choice I'd been avoiding settle into my bones. "Then I'll keep wanting you," I said. "And that might be worse." He didn't touch me. That was the worst part. His hand stayed suspended in the air for a second longer, then slowly dropped back to the chair. Controlled. Deliberate. Like restraint was a choice he was making for both of us. I felt it anyway, the absence of contact louder than contact would have been. "Come here," he said. Not a command. Not a request. Something in between. I took half a step forward before I realized I was moving. The space between my thighs and his knees disappeared. My breath hitched immediately, my body reacting faster than my mind could argue. I could feel the heat of him now, unmistakable, rising through the thin barrier of air. He tilted his head back to look at me, eyes darker than before. Closer like this, I noticed details I shouldn't have been noticing. The faint stubble along his jaw, the way his lashes cast shadows under the harsh office light. This wasn't a fantasy version of him. This was real. Tired. Human. "You're doing this on purpose," he said quietly. I shook my head. "I'm trying not to." A corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile. "That's not what it looks like." My knee brushed his again, lingering this time. I felt his breath change just slightly. That was enough. Proof that I wasn't imagining the pull between us. Proof that this wasn't one-sided madness. "I should go," I said. I didn't move. He noticed that too. "You keep saying that," he replied. His voice was low now, rough around the edges. "But you're still here." His hand came up again, slower this time, stopping just short of my hip. Close enough that the warmth of his palm radiated through the fabric of my skirt. I held my breath, my entire body tuned to that single inch of space. "Tell me to stop," he said. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. The clock ticked. The lights hummed. Somewhere deep inside me, something cracked. Not loudly, not all at once, but enough to let feeling pour through. Want. Fear. Guilt. Relief. I placed my hand on the back of the chair instead, gripping the leather to steady myself. The gesture shifted my balance, brought me even closer. My pulse thundered in my ears. "I can't sit," I whispered. His eyes dropped to my hand, then lifted back to my face. "I know." And in that moment, standing between his knees, my body leaning toward his without permission, I understood the truth I'd been avoiding. I wasn't standing because I was strong. I was standing because I was already giving in. Something shifted after that. Not in the room, but in him. He exhaled slowly through his nose, like he was accepting a truth he'd been fighting. His shoulders dropped just a fraction, the tension redistributing instead of disappearing. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Closer." "Then don't sit," he said. Those 3 words landed harder than anything else he could have said. Permission without instruction. Acceptance without pushing. My chest tightened, heat blooming there, sharp and sudden. He leaned forward again, slowly, until his forehead nearly brushed my stomach. Not touching. Still not touching. I could feel his breath through the fabric, warm and steady, like a question he was letting linger. My fingers loosened on the chair. I hadn't realized how hard I was gripping it until then. "This is a bad idea," I said. "I know. You're not stopping me. I'm not moving you either." That was true. He stayed where he was, letting me be the one to close the space. Letting me own every inch I crossed. My body swayed forward without permission, instinct pulling me closer until my thighs pressed gently against his knees. He stilled. Every muscle in him seemed to lock, as if he were holding himself together by sheer will. His head tipped back slightly, just enough for his gaze to meet mine again. The look there, God, it wasn't triumph. It wasn't relief. It was restraint stretched thin. "You're standing right where you shouldn't be," he murmured. I swallowed. "You asked me to stay." "I didn't ask you to stand between my knees." I huffed out a soft, shaky breath. "You didn't tell me not to." That earned a quiet sound from him. Not a laugh, not quite. Something low, involuntary. His hand finally moved, brushing the air beside my leg, then stopping. He clenched it into a fist and rested it back on his thigh. That tiny almost touch sent a ripple through me. My skin reacted like it had been grazed. Nerves lighting up. Awareness pooling low and insistent. I shifted again, just enough to feel how close we really were. "Look at you," he said, almost to himself. "Still standing. Still pretending you're in control." I leaned down then, just enough that my shadow fell across his face. My voice came out softer than I intended. "I never said I was in control," I whispered. "I said if I sit, it's the end." His eyes closed for half a second. "And if you stay standing?" he asked. I didn't answer with words. I answered by staying right there, close, trembling, breathing him in, letting the silence stretch until it felt like the most dangerous thing in the room. He moved first. Not toward me, away. Just slightly. His hands slid to the edges of the chair, fingers gripping like he needed something solid to hold onto. The movement broke the spell just enough for my breath to rush back into my lungs. "This is where it stops," he said. But his voice didn't match the words. It was low, unsteady, honest in a way that betrayed him. I nodded. I even meant to step back. Instead, my hand lifted. I didn't plan it. I didn't think. My fingers reached out and caught the cuff of his sleeve, just barely, like I could still pretend it was an accident. The fabric was warm. Real. My pulse spiked so hard I felt dizzy. He froze. Slowly, carefully, he looked down at my hand, then back up at my face. The silence that followed was heavier than anything we'd shared so far. "If you do that," he said quietly, "you don't get to pretend anymore." My throat tightened. I loosened my grip, but I didn't let go. "I already stopped pretending," I whispered. His eyes softened in a way that hurt more than hardness ever could have. He lifted one hand then, not to take mine, not yet, but to hover beneath it, palm up, waiting. An invitation without pressure. I hesitated. In that pause, everything I was risking lined up in my mind like a warning sign I chose not to read. Consequences. Regret. The version of myself I would have to live with after this moment ended. Then my fingers slid into his palm. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. Just skin meeting skin, warm and electric, like my entire body had been waiting for permission to exist in that space. His hand closed around mine gently, reverently, like he understood the weight of what I was giving him. I exhaled, shaky. "That's it," he murmured. "That's the line." I nodded again, my forehead dipping closer to his. My knees felt weak now, my balance compromised, not because I was sitting but because I no longer wanted to stand alone. I was still on my feet, but something in me had already crossed over. I was still standing. That detail mattered more than it should have. My feet planted on the floor, my body upright, but my hand was in his, and that single point of contact rewrote everything. He didn't pull me closer. He didn't let go either. We stayed like that, caught between motion and restraint. "You should walk away," he said. I nodded. My hair brushed my cheek with the movement. "I know." Neither of us moved. His thumb shifted slightly against my fingers, a small unconscious stroke that sent a shiver straight through me. I felt it everywhere. My shoulders tightening, my breath stalling, my knees threatening to give in. I steadied myself by leaning just a fraction closer, my free hand bracing on the back of the chair. The office light flickered once overhead. "I keep thinking," he said quietly, "that if I don't stand up, this stays manageable." I let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "If you stand up," I said, "I won't remember why I tried not to sit." That earned his attention fully. He looked up at me again. Really looked like he was memorizing something he knew he shouldn't want to remember. His grip tightened, not enough to hurt, just enough to be certain. "You're dangerous like this," he murmured. "So are you," I replied. His knees shifted then, brushing the backs of mine. The contact was brief, accidental in theory, devastating in practice. My balance faltered, and for half a heartbeat my weight tipped forward. He caught it instantly, his other hand rising to my waist, stopping just short, hovering there like a safety net he didn't want to use. "Careful," he said. The word landed heavy, loaded. My breath hit his shoulder, close enough now that I could feel it change the moment he noticed. The space between us shrank to something charged, humming, alive. "I'm still standing," I whispered, more to myself than to him. His voice came back rough. "Barely." Outside, thunder rolled low and distant, the first sign of a storm neither of us had checked the forecast for. Inside, time stretched thin, fragile as glass. I didn't sit, but I didn't pull away either. And in that suspended moment, hand in his, body tilted toward his, I realized the truth I hadn't dared to name yet. Sometimes the fall doesn't happen when you sit down. Sometimes it happens when you decide not to move at all. He stood up. Not suddenly. Not like a decision made in panic. He rose slowly, carefully, as if giving me time to change my mind, time I didn't take. The chair slid back a few inches with a soft scrape against the floor. And just like that, the world rearranged itself. Now we were level. The difference was immediate. The air between us felt thinner, charged, like it might spark if either of us breathed wrong. His hand was still holding mine, but the angle changed, our fingers adjusting naturally, instinctively, until my palm rested fully in his. My shoulders lifted with a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "I didn't ask you to sit," he said quietly. I shook my head. "You didn't have to." His other hand came to my waist then, not gripping, not pulling, just resting there, warm and grounding. The contact sent a slow wave through me, not sharp, not rushed. Heavy. Certain. I felt myself soften into it, my body responding before guilt could catch up. "This is the part," he murmured, his forehead leaning gently toward mine, "where we stop pretending it's about the chair." I closed my eyes. When I opened them, I was already closer. Our foreheads touched lightly, breath mingling, both of us perfectly still. I could feel his heartbeat through his chest, steady but strong, answering the frantic rhythm in mine. "I didn't sit down," I whispered. "No," he said. "You chose to stay." That was the truth of it. Not temptation. Not weakness. Choice. His thumb brushed my knuckles once, slow and deliberate, like punctuation at the end of a sentence neither of us could take back. I leaned in just enough to let my weight rest there. Not collapsing, not surrendering, simply trusting the space between us to hold. The storm outside finally broke. Rain struck the windows hard, sudden and loud, like the world exhaling all at once. And as I stood there, wrapped in a moment I would carry long after it ended, I understood something that still hasn't left me. Sometimes the line isn't crossed when you give in. Sometimes it's crossed when you realize you already have, and choose to remain standing anyway.